Hello my friends, I'm Rich Larson and I'm the RC Tire Guy. Today we are here in Eagle Mountain, Utah in the desert. One of my favorite places to ride in the winter. Right now it's pretty miserable. That being said, you guys asked for it and I'm gonna give it to you. We've got the Beta 200 and the Beta 300. We're gonna do a lap time comparison. Now you guys may remember we did one, TM 300 versus Beta 300 on a sand track. You can check that video out right here. Now, that one was two 30-minute motos. That was brutal. We're gonna do it a little bit different today, and I think you guys are gonna like what we're doing. We've got a turn track, a hard enduro loop, and a natural EnduroCross track, and I'm gonna give you guys a full comparison on each bike on each loop. So we're gonna have multiple lap times. I'm not gonna be doing 30-minute motos. That's gonna be too brutal for me today. But I am gonna do about 5 laps on each course and yeah, break down how each bike performs. We'll have lap time comparisons, we'll have heart rate monitor, we'll have everything set up so you guys can see how good the Beta 200 performs. Now, we did just do a full review on the Beta 200. Also check that out right here. I've been beyond impressed with this bike. Like I said, I think these lap times are gonna be pretty similar, but there's only one way to find out. So let's get into it. All right guys, so we are at the first loop. We've got a pretty simple turn track here. Now we've got my lap time tester. We're gonna be able to do 5 laps. We're gonna do 5 laps on each bike. I'll do a little warm up, make sure I'm dialed in. I'll just tell you right now, the dirt here is not super dialed right now. It's gonna be real, it seems like it's gonna be kind of hard pack under and soft on top. It's gonna be slick. I'm gonna have to tippy toe lemon tree all the way around this course because it is going to be challenging. So we're going to see the difference here. Maybe suspension might come into play, being we have the low boy kit. I think suspension is going to come into play all day today. That being said, engine, you're going to hear the difference in the 2 bikes. And yeah, let's get right after it with 5 laps on the 300. Slick. All right guys, we just got done with the first 5 laps. 23 seconds for the most part. I had 1:24, I kind of screwed up. It's a quick lap time. Man, it is so slick out here. It's hard pack with like the most flowery sand on top I've ever ridden. So I have to really be careful, just trying to hit everything as perfect as possible. It's very challenging. But it'll be a good test. So like I said, 23-second lap times. We're gonna switch the lap board over to the Beta and or the Beta 200 and we'll get out the next moto. Here we go. All right, guys, we just got done with the 5-lap moto. I actually did 8, or I guess 7. The first lap doesn't count. I did 7 because I kind of lost track of where I was going. And honestly, I felt like I was going slower. I was like, I'm on the beta 200 here. I'm holding it wide down the straights, trying to get as much as I can get. And surprisingly, I actually laid a faster time on this one. We got a 22-second lap time, which I don't think I got on the 300. I'll have to look back. But that being said, pretty consistent laps. There was one lap where I hit a 25 of the 6 laps that I did, but they were right on par with the 300. 23-second lap times, very, very closely matched. This thing, it was almost easier to handle into the corners. And even if I made a mistake, it was almost like it was easier for me to get back into that proper position, proper form, and recover. Whereas on, I think, the Beta 300, it's like maybe a little bit more mass and it's a little bit more challenging to get back into that proper place after you make the mistake. So I felt flickable, I felt fast on this thing. That being said, it is lowered. I felt like I was struggling in some of the corners. I was dragging peg a little bit. So I think if it was even heightened, I might be able to go faster. But that being said, super solid. That was a lot of fun. We're gonna move on to the hard enduro loop. I'm sure most of you are waiting for this one. So we're gonna go right into it. It's gonna be a little bit longer of a lap. And yeah, we'll explain it when we get there. So let's get after it. All right, guys, we are on to the hard enduro loop. I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for this. There's a couple things I want to explain. This is a decent sized loop. It's not the hardest thing ever, but there is some challenging sections here. I think it's going to be enough to test how this 200 does in this situation comparatively to the 300. Now, on top of that, I have to say something here. We're only going to do 2 laps, and there's a reason for that. I would do 5 or 10 or really do a whole long test, but I have to say this isn't my bike. So I don't want to scratch it. I don't want to hurt it. I've got to be very precise in what I'm doing. Now, I understand there'll probably be some scientists in the comments going, hey, you're not, it's not a valid test, because unsubscribe then, you know, unsubscribe. It's all good. I'm just having fun, guys. Let's enjoy it. So I'm going to start on the 300, get it dialed in. I've done this loop quite a few times on this one. And then I'm going to move over to the 200 and we're going to see how this thing does. I'm excited to test it in here. I think the low boy suspension is going to be a challenge coming down. I'm going to be really moving on that downhill and I'm going to be using all that suspension. So that's going to be a big section, I think, and a decider for this bike. But you know what? The uphills are gnarly too. So let's get right after it with the test of the 300. Here we go. All right, guys, we just got done with the first 2 laps on the Beta 300, the bike I'm used to. Man, it was super loose. Those are the first 2 laps I've done on this loop for a long time. There's some big lines that I didn't pull on the 300. I've done them before. It would have cut a lot of time off, but I kind of played it safe and kept it cool. Made sure I took the safe lines, the clean lines. That being said, a 153 was my first lap, and a 202 was my second lap. I made a little mistake about halfway up this little cliff section. I think the Beta is going to struggle in some certain spots where we've got climbs, where I've got to keep that bike in the power. It might be challenging to do. We'll see. I'm excited to test it. 2 laps on this thing, on the Beta 200. It's going to be a lot of fun, and let's get after it. I screwed that up. Doesn't quite want to pull second there. All right, guys, we just got done with the Beta 200 2 laps. Now, I was pushing hard on that one. I feel like I pushed maybe a little harder than I did on the 300 just because I was a little bit more warmed up. I understood the terrain a little better. I've given the 200 the advantage in both the previous test and this one, so maybe in the next one we'll ride the 200 first, then ride the 300. That being said, really close on the lap times here. I didn't run a faster lap on this. My fastest lap, I believe, was a 153 on the 300. This one I did a 159 and a 154. But I believe average of the two would be very close to the 300 or maybe faster, because I was, I believe, 2 seconds faster on the first lap. So a little bit more, I feel like I almost felt more consistent. I was able to clean the sections a little better. I made a mistake on the second lap on the 300, and you know, maybe it's the tire. I mean, again, I know, like I said, we got some scientists out there, and they may not like it, but there are two different tires on these bikes. We've got a VE33S Dakota on this front, or sorry, in the rear, and a JX8 Dakota on the 300. So there is a difference in the tires. This one might be hooking a little bit better everywhere because it's a little bit newer. It's a little bit softer, I feel like. That mousse is a little bit hard. That being said, again, for fun. We're having a good time. We're trying to feel the difference between these two bikes. I'm not feeling a lot of disadvantages on the 200. There was a couple times, and you'll hear it on the helmet cam, where I kind of bogged out. It didn't want to pull second up this where the 300 would. But other than that, man, I'm amazed. This 200 is a sick bike. And yeah, we got one more test. Let's get after it with EnduroCross. All right, guys, we are on to the final test. We've got a natural EnduroCross track here. This is a lot of fun. I'm gonna lay down 5 laps on each bike. Now, the first test, I gave the Beta 200 the advantage. I rode the 300 first. After I ride a few laps, I'm a little bit more used to the track and I'm adapted to the track. I'm kind of prepared for what it's going to throw at me. Changing to the 200, the 200's been getting the advantage on the first 2 tests. So this time, I am going to ride the Beta 200 first, then move on to the 300. We will see what the lap times are. There's a lot of intensity here on this lap, so it's going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a good one to close it out and see the differences between the two bikes. So let's get right after it. All right, guys, we just got done with the Beta 200 moto on the EnduroCross track. We got one more moto to go on the Beta 300. Now, that previous moto, it was kind of consistent. I felt like I was being consistent. Then I looked at my lap times and I'm like, a little bit all over the place. 42, 44, 46 was the slowest. I made a couple mistakes. And something I'm noticing now on the Beta is, yeah, the front end is a little bit washy on the Beta 200. It's a little bit washy. It could be with the low boy kit. I came into this section here and went to brake before the obstacle and it like locked up and kind of like pushed. So it's just a little bit different. It kind of rides. I think maybe with this kit I would need to also take away a little bit of the sag. It's a little bit riding like a lowrider, right? So that's something we're kind of starting to notice here for sure. We'll see how this moto goes on the Beta 300. We've got 5 more laps, and let's get after it.
All right, guys, we just finished the final test on the Beta 300. That was brutal. The laps out here are getting harder and harder, honestly, because it's getting a little more chewed up and there are so many loose rocks. I mean, the whole entire time, you're kind of dodging or hitting rocks this size. It's absolutely brutal to ride. You have to be on point. Now, that's where I think the big time difference came into play here. I was able to beat my fastest time on the 200, on the 300 by about 2 seconds. Consistently, I was faster on the 300 in this final test. This is a somewhat EnduroCross track. Suspension is pretty important on EnduroCross, and this one just, again, it's not set up for me. This isn't my bike. I'm trying to be real careful with it and being real precise. It rides great, it feels great, but when it comes down to preference, when it comes down to my actual setup, it's my bike, my Beta 300. It definitely shows here. The EnduroCross, again, it's about suspension. It's about that, trying to find the maximum speed into each obstacle, and this bike does it really, really well. The averages of each session were actually very close. This one was the biggest difference, the EnduroCross course, compared to the hard enduro, compared to the turn track. And that kind of makes sense. You know, this is where the suspension comes into play, and that's the biggest difference between these two bikes. A lot of people think engine is the big difference. It's not, I'll be honest. I could have the same exact lap times, truly, I believe, on the 200 with the right suspension setup. I'm telling you, man, this bike's incredible. I'm blown away by how good it is. Make sure you guys check out my full review on it. We posted that a few weeks ago. I hope you guys are enjoying the stuff we're doing. We're having a lot of fun. I'm having a blast doing this stuff. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, letting me do what I love. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as follow us on Instagram at IRC Moto, my personal Instagram page at RichLarson511. And until next time, keep shredding.